I run the living wage program here at the Interfaith Center. For those who don't know, we actually have a Living Wage Virginia program, which has been going since 2018. And we have focused mostly on certifying businesses throughout the Commonwealth. And to certify someone as a living wage employer, we recognize that they need to pay every single person who is part of their payroll, whether they're contracted, whether they're full or part-time, the living wage that is appropriate for their area. And so living wages are very locally focused because they take into account things like rent prices, childcare prices, transportation prices, those types of things. And so all of that is going to be different depending on your locality. So I would just love to toss it out to folks right now, a question on the comparison between minimum wage and living wage. Who knows what the current Virginia minimum wage is? You can just come off mic.
12.
$12 an hour. Yes. And was it always $12 an hour or when did it shift?
2 years ago, it shifted.
Yes. So Virginia is one of those, we really worked hard, right, to get a minimum wage change in Virginia. There are still plenty of states who are only paying the federal minimum wage, which of course is $7.25 an hour, which is insane. Absolutely no one can live on that. But even $12 is challenging for folks because inflation, prices of rent have gone up, et cetera. And so we really support the concept of living wages. Living wages is a concept that started hundreds of years ago with the faith community actually in the UK. And it has become a kind of worldwide movement for people to get involved with. So the living wage in your area is going to be higher than $12, but we think that it is something that is really important, maybe even a moral imperative for our congregations to get on board with all of those who are employed by a congregation being paid a living wage. Now, lots of folks as congregations, I am sure Sheila and I have put our heads together. We actually think a lot of congregations are probably already qualified. If you are paying your main pastor and say your part-time administrative assistant, the living wage in your area, you are qualified. You can get certified. So we think for a lot of congregations, actually, it won't be very complicated. There will be some congregations who might need to look at some of their pay policies when it comes to contracted staff, like cleaning staff or landscaping staff, or part-time childcare assistant staff, etc. But for the most part, we actually think lots of folks will be able to be certified right away. So because this is kind of a Labor Day initiative, we really wanted to roll out a campaign to try to get 100 certified congregations across the Commonwealth before September 4th. That is Labor Day. To have a living wage congregation, the benefit of having something that is voluntary is that it actually can lift the wage floor for your specific area. And so that is the real power of this. It's a movement. And it also shows, of course, your commitment to workers, a commitment to equity. And we think it's just something that might be doable. So we're pretty excited. I'm going to open the floor up to any questions folks may have. You may have lots, and that's totally okay. Go for it.
So, Jase, this is Anne. Excuse me. I forget the answer to this question, which is why I'm asking it. What is the calculation for Northern Virginia in terms of living wage? I know, for example, in our parish, about 4 years ago, every single employee who was being paid by the parish was receiving at least $15 an hour. But I think the living wage up here is probably closer to 18 or 20.
And my apologies. Yes, sorry, y'all. I have a mask on and I was doing two things at once. It's hard to tell what I was doing. So I will preface this, Anne, by first saying that we are actually going to start shifting our rates to a new methodology in November. We are becoming an affiliate of the National Living Wage, which is a member of the Global Living Wage Network. The benefit of that is that our numbers will come straight from the Economic Policy Institute, and it will be a methodology that includes childcare. There are a lot of methodologies that actually don't include childcare, but we all know that the incredible burden on parents to make sure that their children have adequate care is a huge part of what comes into people's living wages. Now, of course, if you are a solo person with no children, the rate will be different. But for now, we are using the MIT living wage calculator to determine those rates. Our numbers that are listed on our website are a couple years old. So you're going to see some differences when I share this calculator with you. But the reason why we are certifying folks at the current numbers we have are because we are going to shift those rates in November. So we don't want to shift them constantly. We're going to move to a yearly new methodology that will come out every November. So for our current locality in Northern Virginia, and to go back to your original question, it is $17.50 as our certifying rate. In November, we will relook at our numbers and that will change.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Anne.
Jase, Ed, yeah, two questions. One, is that purely wages or is that compensation?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ed. So there's a calculator that's called the total remuneration calculator, and that would include things like your healthcare stipend, things like whether you provide paid leave, etc. But there also needs to be a base wage floor, right? Because sometimes those things will shift. And so with the new methodology that we're going to be adopting in November, employers will actually be able to use an online calculator and put in all of the numbers that are relevant to what they provide their employees against that total remuneration number and see how much they're actually paying into their employees' lives. There will still be a base wage floor that needs to be met. And so this current methodology we're using is just that base wage floor. However, it includes things like how much healthcare would cost, how much childcare would cost, et cetera. So it's not against total remuneration. It's a needs-based assessment, if that makes sense.
Okay. The other question is that you mentioned contractors. I think it'd be awfully like we now have a yard service that comes in and does our mowing and takes care of our memorial garden.
Nice.
I don't know that we're going to be able to really know what they pay. Although it's a very highly regarded service, so I'm sure they're toward the top of I don't know what they pay.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Ed. I think that's going to be a lot of folks' case, right? That they're not actually sure what their contractors are making. So we will be able to have some draft language for whether you want to have a conversation over email or whether you want to call some of your contractors and just figure out how much they're actually paying their staff per hour. We have had congregations do this in the past, and they've let people know, hey, we're trying to get certified. We just want to understand whether you pay $16 an hour or not, whether you pay $15 an hour or not, et cetera. You don't need to get proof. You don't need to ask a lot of questions. You just want to kind of do that initial ask. And most people are very open to stating what wage they're actually paying their workers per hour.
Eileen, I saw you had your hand up a minute ago, but you've brought it back down. Has your question been answered?
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, Ed went right ahead with the contractor. Same question.
Perfect.
Fantastic. And I just want to highlight that Anne said in the chat, you can establish the wage rate when the congregation negotiates the contracts for laborers. Correct, right? So this might be an ongoing thing that once you have checked in this first time, you get certified, there might then be an ongoing procedure for when you ask, you negotiate any kind of contract in the future.
I want to mention one more thing about living wage stuff, if that's all right, that Jase and I had talked about, because congregations, I feel like everyone, not everyone, the vast majority of congregations and people of faith are like, oh yes, we should pay people enough to live on. This seems moral and upstanding. Let's do that. And then you kind of fall into three camps. You've got your tiny congregations who, as just mentioned, might have like a pastor or even like a dual bivocational pastor and maybe like an admin assistant. And generally, those congregations are already paying living wages. I don't know where any of your congregations fall into this. There are some congregations that don't have any paid employees, but maybe might pay a caretaker through a contracting service to upkeep the facility or something like that. Then there's like your slightly larger congregations, and this is often where the challenge comes in because, okay, you've got 3 or 4 staff members, and maybe you also hire somebody who does maintenance or somebody who does cleaning or somebody who does childcare during your Sunday services or whatever day, Friday services, whatever. In those cases, it might be a little bit more of a challenge to those folks often are paid minimum wage just because that's what the congregation like put into their budget. And if their budget is tight, that can be a tougher conversation, but it's still a worthwhile conversation because at the end of the day, we do want to see even those folks we're paying for only 2 hours a week, we want to see them getting a living wage, and we want to, as Jay said, raise the wage floor for the whole area. And then you have your giant congregations who often just haven't thought about this at all because the people in the social justice rooms and the people in the theology rooms and the people in the business rooms never talk to each other. I think there's a lot of benefit from getting those people into the same room to talk about this and to really bring up that moral imperative of, you know, okay, if we say we believe this, what are we doing about it? So I do want to encourage you, you know, of the folks on this call, I think only Itoria is clergy. I think many of you, well, and Jean, you know, all Quakers are clergy because there's that of God in everyone. But I do want to encourage you, even as lay leaders, you know, your voice matters. And if you're bringing this up to somebody on staff, to your congregation's leadership, you can really start having a more intensive conversation and especially now, you know, a lot of congregations are currently working on putting their budget together. A lot of fiscal years run July to June. So, okay, how can we make this happen for the next fiscal year? I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, there's so many excellent points that you just gave, Sheila. And we are here to, well, I am here to help with those conversations as well. So I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. And if you are interested in either draft language for how to talk to your clergy people about this, how to ask contractors these types of questions, any more specific questions about what the wage is in your area currently or what certification entails, I'm totally happy to answer those questions. Whenever you do get certified, you will have both a certificate that will be delivered to you that you can display wherever you would like. And you also get a window cling for your congregational window. And again, that just helps to both be able to establish the brand of Living Wage Virginia, but it also marks you as a congregation that pays a living wage. We will then also include your congregational information on our website page that we're currently building for our 100 congregations by Labor Day website. And so you will be listed on our website as well, and people will be able to see that your congregation pays a living wage.
Sarah, I see your hand up.
Jase, thank you for these websites. On the website, the current one, the MIT living wage, will that give a formula, or will that tell me what the living wage is for Southwest Virginia where I live?
That's a great question, Sarah. Thank you. So we have 4 certifying areas right now. So where we have steering committees, where we have volunteers who also help, and that is Northern Virginia, Richmond, Harrisonburg, and Charlottesville. We would like for this to be a statewide initiative. And so our statewide number is a number that is the number inclusive of all of the living wages in Virginia and then averaged. And so that number is 1750.
Okay.
We understand that feels a little high for some folks, say in Southwest, when the actual living wage is actually a little bit lower. And so we're actually building a Blacksburg living wage committee right now, Sarah. So it's very interesting to speak with you, but we haven't rolled that out yet. So if you do have some more specific questions or your congregation wants to have some more conversations about that, please just reach out to me. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Of course. So if you need anything from me, please know that you can hit me up at Jase, Jase at virginiainterfaithcenter.org. Happy to answer any questions, happy to prepare some draft language for you all, talking to your congregations. And let's reach that 100 congregations by Labor Day.